What sounds like fiction but is actually a real historical event. In 2007, a paraglider got trapped in the updraft of two joining thunderstorms and was lifted to an altitude of 33,000 feet. She landed over 3 hours later about 60 kilometers north of her starting position, having survived extreme cold, lightning and lack of oxygen. Jean de Clisson, 1300 to 1359, was married to a French nobleman who was beheaded for treason by the French king. Enraged, she sold their estate and purchased 3 black warships with red sails, and became a pirate queen of the English Channel who targeted French ships. She became known as the Lioness of Brittany, and in her 13 years of piracy she would slaughter every member of a ship's crew except for one, so that last survivor could go back and tell the French king what had happened. The Great Molasses Flood of 1919. A tank filled with 2 gallons of molasses burst and sent a tidal wave of molasses through the streets of Boston. 21 people were killed. An English king named Ethelred, later called the Unready, took some troops to defend against a Viking invasion. The weather was bad, so a lot of the Vikings' ships crashed as they were landing. Ethelred thought that it would be dishonorable to attack them as they were stumbling onto shore. So he kept his troops back until the Vikings had a chance to get together and form proper battle lines before he attacked them. The better prepared Vikings then won the fight and slaughtered a bunch of Ethelred's men, and he and the rest were forced to run away while the Vikings went around pillaging. Edgar Allan Poe wrote a novel in 1838 in which 4 shipwrecked survivors, at the point of starvation, choose to resort to cannibalism. So they kill the young cabin boy, Richard Parker, and eat him. In 1884, a ship called the Mignonette sank. 4 crew members survived. At the point of starvation, they killed and ate the youngest of them, Richard Parker. Louis XIX was king of France for 20 minutes. The shortest war ever recorded was around 40 minutes long. During the Salem witch trials, dogs were also accused of witchcraft. 2 dogs were executed because of it. The Soviet scientists starving to death saving the seed bank of Leningrad during Hitler's invasion in the winter of 1941-42 despite it being full of corn, wheat and potatoes. Wojciech was a bear who fought Nazis in return for cigarettes and beer. He didn't die until 20 years after WW2. A Russian Tsar had a bomb thrown at him, avoided it, and thought it was a good idea to stay there to look at the damage. Enter second guy with bomb. Sergeant Stubby. During World War I, a soldier found a stray dog when training on the Yale University campus, and took a liking to him. The soldier snuck the dog onto the ship when he had to leave campus, and when the dog was found by the commanding officer, he was allowed to stay because he had learned how to salute. Stubby was injured a few times during the war, but he was useful with alerting his squad of surprise mustard gas attacks and gunshots before the human ear could detect the sound. He also found and comforted wounded soldiers and caught a German soldier by the leg of his pants until American soldiers got to him. AKA, the bestest boy to ever live. Joshua Norton was just this random crazy guy from San Francisco who hated all this political nonsense that was going on at the time and figured he could do the job better at it himself. And thus the Emperor of the United States and Protector of Mexico was born. While he held no real power, the people liked him so much that they treated him like royalty anyways. Any currency issued under his name was treated like real money at many establishments. One day, he was arrested by a private security force because of his mental health, which enraged practically all of San Francisco. The police chief let him go because he had committed no crime, and Norton gave an imperial pardon to the guy who arrested him. After this incident, any police officer Norton passed would salute him. Another time, when a riot had formed and was getting pretty violent, Norton simply stood in front of the mob and calmly prayed, which meant to disperse the mob. And that's not even a fraction of the crazy stuff that he did. President Andrew Jackson's funeral in 1845. His pet parrot had to be removed because it was swearing loudly. 21 Sikh soldiers fought against 10,000 Afghan intruders and won. It is known as the War of Sarigari. I don't know if this counts as a historical event, because it happened in 2010, but the owner of the Segway company, Jimmy Heselden, died by driving his Segway off a cliff near his estate in Yorkshire. In 1985, Philadelphia police bombed a residential neighborhood. The resulting explosion destroyed 2 city blocks, killing 5 children and 6 adults. In the Middle Ages, gays and lesbians would become nuns and monks to avoid persecution. And since religion was a heavy influence in those days, it was seen as noble that they were dedicating themselves to God. They would have special friends, and since no one could get pregnant, it wasn't that big of an issue. The death of Ken Rex McElroy. He terrorized Skidmore, Missouri for decades, stalking, assaulting, murdering and raped 2 14-year-olds who were his wives. He had an expensive attorney, so he was never charged. The law never helped the poor town. One day, the town gathered for a meeting on how to deal with McElroy. Details get a little vague here, but apparently someone alerted the room that McElroy was in the bar up the street. Quietly and calmly, everyone got up and walked over to the bar. As McElroy got into his truck, someone shot him in the back of the head. The town just went back to their business. When the witnesses, like the entire town, were questioned, everyone claimed they didn't see anything. No one has ever been arrested. When you read the real John Brown story, from Kansas to Harper's Ferry, it just doesn't seem real. Fundraising. Canada. Clandestine fundraising. Religion. Asking everyone to join. Betrayal by friends. Martyrdom. Etc. John Wilkes Booth was at his execution. The East German balloon escape. In 1979, 2 families escaped East Germany to West Germany by a homemade hot air balloon. Asterisk edited for redundancy. The Roman Emperor Caligula once declared war against Neptune, god of the ocean. He led his soldiers to a beach and instructed them to stab the water. Due to a military standoff that took years, 15 ships became stranded in an inland sea, and over 8 years formed a multinational ship-based society that even included its own currency. Harold Holt, the PM of Australia, went for a swim in the ocean in 1967 and was never seen again. In 1980, Lake Peigneur in Louisiana drained like a bathtub with a plug removed. Oil drillers on a rig in the lake had hit a mine shaft below. The rig, barges, a tugboat and part of a nearby island got sucked into the largest man-made whirlpool ever. 9 Italian geologists being charged with manslaughter for not predicting an earthquake. Bulgarian swineherd, King Ivalo the swineherd, became a king and won a battle against the trained army of the current king of that time. Most of the random fictional sounding events in the world can be found on YouTube with Sam Onella Academy. The videos are hilarious and just shows how ridiculous some people were. Plus the videos are relatively short and you stay interested till the end. Dr. Robert Liston performed an operation that ended up with a 300% mortality rate. He was amputating a leg of a patient. During this he sliced off the fingers of an assistant. They both died of infection. He also slashed the coattails of a spectator, who was so terrified that the knife pierced his vital organs that he died from fright. In July 1518, residents of the city of Strasbourg, then part of the Holy Roman Empire, were struck by a sudden and seemingly uncontrollable urge to dance. The hysteria kicked off when a woman known as Frau Trophia stepped into the street and began to silently twist, twirl and shake. She kept up her solo dance-a-thon for nearly a week. And before long, some 3 dozen other Strasbourgeois had joined in. By August, the dancing epidemic had claimed as many as 400 victims. The strange episode didn't end until September, when the dancers were whisked away to a mountaintop shrine to pray for absolution. The funny thing is that there is not really an explanation for what happened. Explanations range from a medical issues known as hot blood, to curses being placed on people. Probably that time the US government hooked listening equipment to a cat so it could spy on Russians, only to realize that cats don't follow commands, and then it got hit by a car. The Carrington Event. In 1859 the Earth was hit by a geomagnetic storm from the Sun. It caused auroras as far south as Rome. Telegraph wires caught fire and in general it was chaos. If this happened today it would likely cause massive blackouts for weeks or even months and cause trillions in damage.